We had people watching for cops on at least 5 corners. We had strapped 2 ladders to the plinth so people could climb on either side, much like felling a tree really.
They've been called extremists, accused by some of erasing Australia's history. Police are trying to find out who they are, because over the last year and a half, they've been targeting and tearing down Australia's colonial statues.
They tell one history. They tell the history of white supremacy.
Now, for years, there has been this intense debate about what Australia does with its colonial statues, and whether they should even be on display.
Do we want to move somewhere?
And this group thinks there is only one way to get change.
There's a list of priorities. Topple is obviously number 1.
I don't see them as protesters, I see them as criminals.
The decision to remove the statue is disgusting. I think it's the ultimate virtue signalling act.
It can be justified. At the end of the day, we're not harming anyone.
When they come down, there is a little bit of relief, but they don't understand the consequences on Indigenous and First Nations people.
For a while now, we've been talking to this secretive group in Melbourne through encrypted texts. Now, there's more than one group in Australia going after these statues, but this group is by far the most active and most coordinated. And they've agreed to talk on the condition that they can wear masks, choose a meeting place, and if we distort their voices.
So to go right at the roundabout and find a gate.
So we've been waiting here for almost 2 hours. We were told by people in the group that they'd pick us up and take us. They keep getting spooked by people walking past, so we're just kind of waiting for their lead.
Finally, they say they're ready for the interview, and they escort us to the spot. When they topple or vandalise a statue, they usually leave a message to the public. The most common one reads, "The colony will fall." They've done the same to this abandoned building where they wanted us to do the interview. When other members are about to follow us in, they see someone near the building and they hide.
Okay, so should I hide?
While we're hiding, I start to think we might not ever make it to this interview.
All right, shall we go?
They're concerned about being seen by the public, so they have some members keep watch while we talk.
Why did you want to do this interview today?
Although it's hard for us to be in these places and in front of the cameras, it feels like an important way to maybe reach people.
At the end of the day, we are just normal people who care about, the issues at hand.
The aim of the group is to get rid of all colonial statues, which they say are reminders of a violent time that should not be celebrated. They've cut down monuments dedicated to the most well-known statues in Melbourne, including John Batman and Captain Cook.
In part, toppling the statue is an act of resistance and a response to the violence that they embody. We're emphasising that hope lies in a culture of resistance.
It can be good to bring it back to Australia's history of not telling the truth about what happened when people came here.
They won't tell me exactly how they know each other.
It is a bit tricky on the feet, but we've got a spot in the corner.
What they do tell me is that since last year, they've been ramping up their actions when it comes to colonial statues. We move to a quieter place and they show me a video of when they recently tried to cut down the Queen Victoria statue in Melbourne.
Some people climbed up, but they failed to get it down and ended up just smashing the base of the marble.
They know their actions are illegal, but they don't care. They say this is a failed attempt because they couldn't completely topple it.
There's a list of priorities. Topple is obviously number 1, and then the gap number 2, and graffiti number 3.
Once they've cut down or vandalised a monument, videos usually pop up online. The most viral video was when they targeted Captain Cook.
We had another few people rigging so that as the statue started to fall, it would fall in a very specific way.
The Captain Cook statue has been repaired, but another statue of King George V is still without its head 9 months later. Victoria Police have condemned this group and are still trying to find them, but this has done little to stop them, and they've posted videos of them carrying the head online.
Where do you keep the king's head?
In a bin sometimes.
Today was in the riverbed.
Pretty ugly king. Shouldn't have a head. It's taken off. What day was it? On the king's birthday, yeah.
And how long does it usually take?
Depends on the statue. Sometimes a few days of planning.
We want to try and be as quick as possible, obviously.
We feel that it's important that this king no longer has a head, but please by no means take it lightly, and that is a serious piece of evidence.
2 weeks after this interview, the bronze head was on stage in Melbourne with the Irish group Kneecap.
This used to belong to the statue of King George.
The move was on brand for Kneecap, who have long been vocal about resisting colonial powers and recently had their US visa revoked for their statements. On their Instagram after the show, they said, "Remember, every colony can fall."
I shit on your head!
The actions of this group and others like them have been strongly condemned over the years.
This sort of senseless vandalism advances no cause.
My aim is not polarization. My aim is not alienation. I want us to be having these conversations.
Have you tried other ways?
We have seen so much struggle, people making appeals, petitions, submissions to the government to very little effect. We're not harming anyone. It's the government, the police who are causing the most harm to people. And at the end of the day, if you're a white Australian and you're angered by a statue coming down, take a good hard look at the fact that Aboriginal people have seen genocide, dispossession, endless violence perpetuated against them.
Many of the statues they target are of colonial figures accused of oppressing Indigenous people.
Are any of you Indigenous?
I'm not.
No, I'm not either. I'm sure there's First Nations people who have taken similar actions, of course. But
We've had endorsement from such a wide range of, groups and individuals, like everything from Aboriginal elders, scholars, activists.
We've spoken to a few Indigenous people who do support their actions.
I think it's acknowledging as well the level of privilege that I come to it with, like as a highly educated white Australian. That privilege is what enables me to be able to do this work.
It's pretty hard to know how many colonial monuments and statues are in Australia when there is no central register, but this site has found at least hundreds. The City of Sydney Council actually agreed to take another look at 25 plaques on colonial statues. It was after its first Aboriginal councillor said it was time to check in on how we told our history. For example, on one of those plaques, Governor Lachlan Macquarie is described as the perfect gentleman. What it fails to mention is that he authorised for Aboriginal bodies to be hung from the trees to cause terror to those who didn't submit to colonial rule. When I reached out to the councillor, she said she was disappointed that little progress had actually been made. There's only a few places in Australia that repairs colonial statues, and this is one of them. It can cost thousands, and it often goes to the ratepayers. They say more statues are being targeted, and it's not just Australia that's been reckoning with this tension.
There's the statue of Colston, who was a slave trader in Bristol, and a public protest basically toppled Colston, rolled him down the main street and into the harbour.
In the UK, after this statue of Colston was pushed into the river, almost 70 tributes to slave traders, colonialists, and other figures were formally taken down. In Australia, only 2 colonial monuments have had a council vote to take them down, and this is one of them.
Here's William Crowther.
This is him?
This is him. Still got the mud from when he hit the ground.
This statue of former Tasmanian Premier William Crowther is in Sydney being fixed, but for more than a century, it stood in a city park. I'm going to Hobart to talk to the councillor who was at the centre of this debate. The Aboriginal community in Tasmania campaigned for years before the council voted to take the statue down.
But before the council could lawfully remove the statue, it was cut down at the ankles and vandalised. No one has ever been arrested or charged over it, and some people in Hobart still believe that it should have never come to a vote in the first place. I meet Louise next to the plinth where the Crowther statue used to be.
I've never seen Hobart more divided, and I think the pinnacle of that division has come through the Dr. Crowther removal activities by the council.
So what do you think of the council's decision to remove the statue?
I personally think the decision to remove the statue is disgusting. I think it's the ultimate virtue signalling act. People who were previously not engaged in probably our heritage artworks and monuments, they see it as a real attack on their own heritage. I actually had a call from one of Dr. Crowther's descendants, his great-great-granddaughter, telling me that the statue had fallen, and she was in tears on the phone.
While the majority of councillors voted to remove the statue, Louise thinks they got it wrong.
Let's tell more of the other story, so let's bring in additions rather than deletions.
The anonymous group you met earlier say they weren't involved in this toppling. They say locals were behind it.
Around the back, there's the word murderer. Dr Crowther never murdered anyone. The allegation is that Dr Crowther broke into the morgue and stole William Lanny's skull.
In 1869, after years of colonial violence, forced relocations and dispossession, William Lanny, a whaler in Hobart, caught the attention of bone collectors who were desperate to send Aboriginal bones to the Royal College of Surgeons in London. When William Lanny died, his head was cut from his body and stolen. A number of historians say it's pretty clear that William Crowther was behind it.
At the time there was competition for bones of Aboriginal people, which of course is outrageous to us, but at the time it was normalised behaviour.
So you spoke about how the descendants of Crowther are upset, and there were similar feelings obviously in the Indigenous community. How do you balance those feelings in your mind?
It was taken down because of a denied and unproven allegation of an individual who actually did a huge amount of good for our community and whose community paid for and wanted this statue erected. Even if the allegations were true, we need to look at the whole person and the values at the time.
After the Crowther toppling, this footage was anonymously posted online.
So what do you think about the people who toppled this statue?
I think that they believe they're heroes and that they're doing almighty great things and changing the world, whereas I think they're clearly pathetic.
I'm in Melbourne to meet Imogen Johnstone, the Kamilaroi woman who wants to see them all come down and stay down.
I know for myself it represents death and the genocide of my ancestors. I think that time in society is not a time that we want to celebrate.
In Sydney and in Melbourne, police officers are sent to protect statues during heightened times like the King's Birthday, Anzac Day, and January 26 or Australia Day.
What do you think when you see pictures of police protecting these statues?
It just shows you that they're protecting the wrong thing. They could protect our sacred sites, our burial sites that are being taken from us. They can protect our children from being incarcerated. They can protect our basic human rights, I think. I grew up with an auntie, Tanya Day.
Imogen's auntie, Tanya Day, died in custody after tripping and sustaining a traumatic brain injury. Imogen believes there's more public outrage when the statues come down than when Indigenous people die in custody.
I think that the way that they react to the statue is a kick in the face. My auntie's a human being who lost her life.
What do you think of the actions of the people cutting down these statues?
When they come down, there is a little bit of relief and also praise that someone's done it. But on the other hand, they don't understand the consequences that it holds on Indigenous and First Nations people because they don't have to walk around with it every day after they've done it.
A few days after the king's head was cut down from the statue, Imogen says she got a message accusing her of doing it.
It actually causes a bigger issue of racism, and we're instantly made to be the stereotype of like a loud, violent, angry Aboriginal people.
Indigenous statues and monuments have also been hit with vandalism. A few years ago, a picture of Captain Cook was painted onto a memorial. Last year, the words, "You trashed our statue, so we trashed yours," was left next to a broken Aboriginal sculpture in Victoria.
Some of the Indigenous people that we've spoken to have said that often when a statue is toppled, they see more division. What do you think of that?
I wouldn't attribute that to the toppling of the statue. I would attribute that to so many leaders who are just trying to exacerbate political polarisation and othering within our communities.
I think racism in this country has been here from day dot, and maybe something like the toppling of a statue, maybe it flares it up, but maybe it's just exposing what's always around us. I do also recognise and feel really troubled by that. Maybe something we need to think more about or have more conversations about.
Pointing to the clear absence in our public spaces, there have been calls for more Indigenous statues. This statue of musicians and activists Archie Roach and Ruby Hunter was put here last year.
That's one that gets me emotional. I instantly want to cry when I look at it. And those are the moments we want to be reminded of the resilience and our warrior men.
In Hobart, Louise still holds hope that the Crowther statue will be back.
Our government departments, they've fallen into this trap of wokeism where you must appease certain groups. I actually hold out hope that the statue can be reinstated.
Despite the backlash and the ongoing investigations from police, this group says they'll keep intensifying their efforts.
As we said before, statues are a small part of it. You ask why we put our energy into statues, and the plain answer is that that's just one of the few things that we do. If we don't escalate in some regard, it'll be business as normal.